This is the Ramana Maharshi 40 Verses on Reality Satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and to deeply inquire into the self. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm a seeker like you, sharing what we love. I've been blessed with years of deep teaching and practice that I bring to this satsang. This week's reading from 40 Verses on Reality is verse 31. Immersed in the self, nothing remains to be done. These are Ramana's words. For him who is immersed in the bliss of the self arising from the extinction of the ego, what remains to be accomplished? He is not aware of anything as other than the self. Who can apprehend this state? For the self, what is there to do or to accomplish? The self is already full and complete, just as it is. The self is only one. There is no other, so there is nothing to gain and nothing to lose. The self is one without a second, so there is no individual who can gain or lose. One without a second means there is no alternative. So this is it, and you are that. What of the world? Does it seem as separate, or is it just the same as you, one with no difference? As long as you think there is a difference, keep inquiring. Make the inquiry deep and thorough. What's it like to see no difference? A spiritual teacher once told me that work was the same as play. Can you see how this is? The difference is only for the mind, not for the existence consciousness that you are. The mind makes up distinctions so it can tell things from one another. For the self, there is no one another. For the self, there's only one. If there is no difference, you and everything are one, without there being everything or one. There is nothing else. There is no you or this. There's only one, the existence, the consciousness, and you are that. Only the self can know the self. The non-self is just an illusion and doesn't really know anything. The self is consciousness, always the knower. Now, some notes on practice to experience this within yourself. How many are you deep within? Are you multiple with multiple existences and consciousness? Or are you just one? Are there two, one to know another, or just one? If there is only one, then there is nothing else, nothing other to desire, nothing that is not already included within this one. Who is this one? How do you know this one? Ramana tells us to look within, more like feeling than thinking. Where does this sense of I arise? Where does it come from? What is its source? How can you know yourself? You are the knower and not an object. How can you not know yourself? You shine each moment as everything you know. You shine as the self. Now to our videos for the week. First is Swami Adyasakti, and he is going to talk also about chapter 31.
Namaste. Welcome to another episode, 31st episode of Uladu Narpadu. So this is a tough one. Let's just jump right into the verse. When the reality surges forth and appears as I, for the jnani who enjoys the bliss of self, which has arisen by destroying the individual self, the ego, what single thing exists to do? He does not know anything other than self, which shines as the one reality. Who can conceive what his state is? This is really a tough one. I've been thinking over it for a long time. How to express. Because as Kabir said, in enlightenment, I'm paraphrasing, in enlightenment, the drop merges into the ocean, but the ocean also merges into the drop. This is an inconceivable state. It boggles the mind. The poor mind trying to wrap itself around this paradoxical, inconceivable state. So let's see, how can I express? Well, there's two ways that I can express it. As the drop, the individual who becomes enlightened, or as the ocean, as the self. So let's start with the drop, from the point of view of the drop. I'm going to read a verse from Upadesha Undiyar, which is referenced in the Uladu Narpadu, verse 15. For the great yogi who is established as the reality due to the death of the mind form, there is not any action to do, because he has attained his nature, his natural state of self-abidance. And there's a note by Sadhu Om. The sense of doership, the feeling I am doing this action, can exist only so long as the mind, whose form is the feeling I am this or I am that, exists. Therefore, when the mind is destroyed, the sense of doership is also destroyed. Hence, the yogi whose mind is dead and who thereby abides as self, the reality cannot be the doer of any action. Whatever action he may appear to do exists only in the outlook of those who mistake him to be the body, which does the action. So, from your point of view, I am this body and this mind, and I'm talking to you on the video. So let's start there, huh? Because that's already your point of view, that I'm doing this. Well, I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting here enjoying this incredible beauty. Huh? There's a Zen haiku, that this very body, the Buddha, this very world, the lotus paradise. What does that mean? It means enlightenment is bliss, man. Enlightenment is fabulous. It's ecstasy. So, an enlightened person feels there's nothing for me to do, nothing for me to strive for, nothing more to learn, to understand, or to realize. Everything is here. Everything is as it is. And as it is, it's perfect, it's beautiful. So, the enlightened person, the drop who merges with the ocean, doesn't feel any lack, doesn't feel any desire. He doesn't feel that anything is missing or wrong. Even the parts of the world that are unsavory or in darkness, he feels, well, this is necessary. Otherwise, there would be no incentive to attain self-realization. So the person who reaches enlightenment feels, other than just maintain this body that I've been given, and if anybody needs some help to understand all this, I'm very happy to offer it. But otherwise, there's nothing to do. This is renunciation. This is retirement, sannyas. It doesn't mean that you go through some ceremony and you change the color of your cloth and then you walk around with a big stick and think that you're superior to everybody. No, it just means that you realize that there is nothing but the self. And I am that. So even though there is still a sense of I am, that is experienced as I. See, this is very hard to explain. Even for someone like me who for many years has studied communication and so on, it's really hard. So we're dealing with absolutes. The absolute is the irreducible, indivisible, always awakened ocean of being and non-dual awareness. That is everything. Even though forms may appear in that ocean, just like foam on the waves when they break at the shore, they dissipate very quickly. So what is there to be attached to? Or what is there to judge and say this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad? Only in terms of purpose. You can say, if you want to become enlightened, then you should do this and you should not do that. Yam niyam. You could say like that. But that has no absolute value. That can change. It can be different for different individuals. It can be different at different stages of the path. It's all just impermanent. It's all just bubbles in the waves. So, nevertheless, it's beautiful. Why is it beautiful? I have a friend. And my friend is very powerful and very rich. And anything that I need or anything that I want, he can very easily provide or deliver it. And of course, the best thing about having this friend is our relationship, our wonderful, sweet, affectionate relationship. He is very amiable, very understanding, and very kind by nature. So he doesn't make any rules. He doesn't say, you can't do this, you can't do that. There's no restrictions on my individuality. I can be as I am, and that's fine. So this is a wonderful relationship. And of course, I'm talking about my relationship with the self, with Brahman. Now, let's look at it from the other side. From the other side, I am pure awareness, non-dual, totally subjective, indivisible, always awake. I have everything. Indeed, I am everything. I create this world as a dream when I want entertainment. It's just a play. Don't be attached to it. It's like I want to see myself. I want to understand what I am. So I make a bunch of mirrors, the individual beings who reflect my beingness in many different ways. Now, in the ocean, near the surface, it's very light, and you can see everything. And the beings that are near the surface of the ocean are the more enlightened beings, and they see things as it is. They reflect the reality. They're awake, they're enlightened. But the ocean also, as it gets deeper and deeper, becomes murky and dark. And in the bottom there's mud. So the beings who are unaware, unenlightened, sink down further and further. And maybe they even go into the mud and they lose self-consciousness entirely, blinded by the murk and the darkness at the bottom. What to do? They have chosen that kind of existence by their actions. So they are not reflecting an accurate view of what I am. So I don't give them much attention. I simply maintain them. That's my duty. But they're there by choice, by their previous actions and their karma. So each and every individual being is simply a reflection of my being, my absolute being. And within that being and that awareness, they create the world, each one for himself, the way he sees it. So the body, the senses, the mind, the world, the ego, all these are illusion. They're simply a reflection of my absolute being. So know this to be true. There is nowhere to go, nothing to do. You are already enlightened. You are already self-realized because you are aware of yourself. Is it not? As soon as someone says, I am, they are saying, I am one with the infinite. I am consciousness. I am being. So, what is this feeling of lack, of something missing, of something incomplete? It is only the hunger to be filled with my completeness. And as soon as you come into relationship with me and begin to reflect me, the more accurately and fully you reflect my being, the more you approach perfection. Your perfection as an individual and as abstract beingness. That every being is a reflection of God. As above, so below. Well, these ancient truths are there in the tradition, the ancient scriptures, the teachings of the sages and so on. They're there in the world. You can find them. And by a very small effort, in a comparatively short amount of time, you can realize them for yourself. So I have made this world actually completely perfect. Now it's up to you to realize it. See? So the self, the absolute, Brahman, is actually very friendly, very helpful and supportive. We are the ones who turn away from him, trying to have our own individual world and self. And so he gives it. But because our knowledge is incomplete, we make it hell. It's imperfect. It's unsatisfying. It's incomplete. The only thing we need to do to make it complete is to turn and realize the self. Om Tat Sat. Om Harihi Om.
And now we have my teacher, Nome, in a discourse, Nirguna Brahman.
Nirguna Brahman, qualityless, attributeless Brahman, is the solitary reality. That Brahman alone exists is the meaning of non-duality. It is said that all of this, the entirety of one's experience, from subtlest thought, ranging from subtlest thought to the forms of objects of the world, is Saguna Brahman, Brahman with attributes, Brahman with qualities. There are not two types of Brahman. The meaning is clear, that all this is only Brahman, and Brahman alone exists. The notion of differentiation of any kind arises entirely dependent upon the previous assumption, purely imagined, of an individual, I. All the differences appear in the midst of that which is undifferentiated, starting with the notion of I. All disturbance appears in the midst of that which is all peace, only starting with the notion of I. The supposition that there is some existent individual. It is an assumed misidentification. Likewise, all suffering, worry, fear, etc., in the midst of great bliss appears, starting with the notion of I. And all bondage has its start in the midst of immense freedom, only with the notion of I. How is this notion imagined? For whom is it imagined? The Maharshi has taught that we should inquire as to who am I, in order to realize conclusively the self as being the solitary reality. Who am I? If only that inquiry is made, profoundly so, the very root, the very source of all the illusions mentioned, of all differentiation, proves to be non-existent. With the root or cause absent, the effect is also absent. The individual and his lifetime's long story both disappear because they are unreal. Brahman remains, as Brahman alone has existed always. What is it that is real? Only the indefinable Brahman. What was all that disappeared? Nothing but Brahman. And Brahman is invariable in its nature. Inquire, know the true nature of yourself, and thus abide in that as that. This being realized, there is nothing further to be attained. In that, all questions are answered, all doubts resolved, all illusions are gone. Abandon the misidentification, if there be any, with the differentiated body and mind and ego. And know the self, the solitary existence, just as it is.
All right. And now we will meditate for a little bit, inquire, breathe in and out, long, slow breaths. Feel the breath as it comes in, as it goes out. And notice that you exist. You exist, and you know that you exist. And now investigate within yourself. Are you many or just one? What is your experience? Within you, is there one self to know another, or just one? Who is the one? Who am I? All right, now let's end with a short chant. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace. Thank you for letting me share this teaching with you. This series on Ramana's 40 verses on reality will continue in the following weeks. If this satsang was of interest, I have more: a free book site, a podcast, my YouTube site, and my blog. The URLs will be on screen next. Namaste.